Father Barnabas Powell is pastor of Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene, Greek Orthodox Church of Cumming, Georgia, USA. Here's Father Barnabas with Sunday's homily.
I struggled about which story I was going to tell first thing this morning. Do I tell the story about the police officer, when I was a police officer, and how drug dealers used to bury their money in plastic wrap and bury it in the ground, and that when we would seize the money, it still had the smell of earth on it? Or do I tell you the story about my memories as a young boy when I experienced the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose holiday we celebrate Monday? And I decided to go with the Dr. King story because I thought it was extremely potent and important for both the passages of Scripture that we've heard this morning. As a young boy, I was raised as a young man in the 1960s. I was born in 1962. Of course, it was a tumultuous time in our nation's history. Everybody gets all tore up about what's going on nowadays in America and how, we're so divided, we're so divided, we're so divided. And yet in the 1960s, during the riots, of course, in Watts and in New York and several other places where there were riots, there was actual killing going on, for heaven's sake. There was actual buildings being burned down. There was a great deal of turmoil and bitterness and anger on either side in the body politic in the 1960s. What we're experiencing today, frankly, in my opinion, is just a continuation of that fire that was lit after the Second World War. But of course, that's a subject for another day. When I was a young man, I was the bookworm. My brother was the guy who wanted to go outside and play, and I wanted to read books. And so it was that as I was being inside, I remember Channel 2 broadcasting the funeral of Dr. King that was here in Atlanta. My grandfather was a City of Atlanta police officer and actually escorted Dr. King's widow, Coretta Scott King, from the police line to the church. And because Dr. King's widow, Coretta Scott King, was afraid because my grandfather was the only white face in a sea of African-American faces as they were approaching the church, because everybody couldn't get in the church. There were thousands and thousands of people there. And the City of Atlanta was ready to burn. The City of Atlanta was geared towards riots and geared towards destruction because this assassination of Dr. King had just really been crushing. And of course, we saw Bobby King assassinated, and earlier on in the 60s, we saw John F. Kennedy assassinated. So in the 60s, we are seeing all of this bloodshed, for heaven's sake. And as I was a boy and I was watching this funeral, and my grandfather told me the story about Dr. King's widow, when they got to the door of the church, said, "Officer, please come in and stand with us." And my grandfather, being an obedient police officer, he said, "No, ma'am, I'm sorry, my orders are to escort you to the door and then go back to the police line." Well, Harry Belafonte had come along with my grandfather and Coretta Scott King and little Martin Luther King III. Harry Belafonte had walked with them, and Coretta Scott King looked over at Harry Belafonte and said, "Harry, make sure this officer gets back to the line safe." And so Harry Belafonte escorted my grandfather back to the police line. It was a terrifying time in our culture. It was upheaval and conflict and war across the seas and war at home. And it was clear that people were confused and they were angry and they were bitter and they were afraid. This was the society that we had in the 1960s. And when I was as a young boy, I was sitting there and I watched this. Channel 2 had a graphic. This was before they had graphics. It was maybe more like a cartoon. They didn't really have graphics. Those of you who are younger, you need to understand that before the invention of the remote control, I was the remote control. Boy, go change that to Channel 5. You turn the knob. There was no such thing as a remote control. Some of you are old enough to remember that. Some of you are old enough to watch know how to use a rotary phone. Funniest video on the internet right now is watching a group of teenagers try to operate a rotary phone. It's hilarious. It makes me feel so much more superior over you young whippersnappers. But I watched, and they put this drawing on of a caisson being led by horses going through the clouds and taking Dr. King to his reward. Now, I remember that's such a vivid memory in my mind that it really draws me back to the power of visible, incarnatable, can I coin a word? I think I will. Let's do it. And incarnation works too. I like that. To make visible that which we feel. It's the reason why art is so powerful. It's the reason why television is so dominant. It's the reason why that most of us nowadays are glued to our screens, because making our thoughts and our ideas and our faith and our beliefs visible is a natural and driving force in human persons. You were meant to make what you believe seeable. But make no mistake about it, folks. You already do that. You already make what you truly believe visible. You make those visible in your choices. You make those visible in your priorities. You make what you truly believe visible in the decisions that you make about what's important and what's not important, about what's valuable and what isn't valuable. Over and over again, every day of my life, I make visible, I put skin on what I truly believe. And what I don't truly believe usually never gets seen. Now, we have to be careful, because there are things that people love to say about Christians. Oh, I don't go to church because all the hypocrites. These people say one thing and do another. Guess what, folks? We're all guilty of that, aren't we? We're all guilty of saying one thing and doing another. We're all guilty of saying, oh yes, I believe in God, and yet our lives don't reflect that. Our choices don't reflect that. You've heard me tell the story about being the #1 Falcons fan. Oh, what do you think of the new quarterback? Oh, I didn't know we had a new quarterback. But I'm the #1 Falcons fan. Oh, so you must have season tickets. Oh, no, I never go to the game. But I'm a #1 Falcons fan. Oh, well, then you must watch them on television on Sundays. No, I never watch them. But I'm the #1 Falcons fan. Pretty soon you're going to start doubting what I'm saying. I'm not quite sure I'm not sure you understand. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. In fact, the whole of society and the whole of the world is set up to keep you making sure your faith especially stays locked away in your cranium and stays invisible. The world out there wants you to keep your faith to yourself. The world out there wants you to keep your faith invisible. And they constantly will do all kinds of things to tell you to hush, to tell you to mind your own business, to say, oh, well, that's religion. You need to keep that private. Sorry, folks. I'm not going to keep my faith private. I'm not going to keep the Orthodox faith private. And in spite of, listen to what the Apostle Paul says to the Corinthians. This is what blows my mind. And every time I read this, I think about the heroes that have gone before us who in spite of every reason to bail out on the faith, in spite of every reason to keep their faith quiet, in spite of every reason to keep their faith a secret so they don't have to face all these difficulties, they kept being faithful. Look at what the Apostle Paul says. We are afflicted in every way. You ever felt that way? Yeah. But we're not crushed. We are perplexed. I don't understand this world. But not driven to despair. We are persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus. Watch that. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. Your faith wasn't meant to be locked away in your cranium. Your faith wasn't meant to be just simply a private, personal opinion. Your faith was meant to affect how you choose to live your life. Your faith was meant to shape your decisions and your priorities. Your faith was meant to be so radically true to you that you choose the hard path of being faithful to God in spite of what the world tells you. In this place, this morning, in this church, you need to understand that normal orthodoxy is visible. Normal orthodoxy can be seen. Goodness gracious alive, look at how we build our churches. Even our architecture points us to God. We walk inside our temples and behold, look, all these visible realities before us. Your faith was meant to be seen by your friends and your family and your acquaintances and your customers and your co-workers. Your faith was meant to be visible, to be embodied, to show up in how you live. That's what normal orthodoxy is. If it is not your experience, then you need to ask a very hard question of yourself. Are you truly orthodox? Because if you are, it's going to shape your language, your thoughts, how you live your life, how you're married, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, what you consider appropriate and inappropriate, what you consider good and what you consider bad. Your orthodoxy is going to form you in such a way that what you truly believe will show up in how you live. And if it doesn't, then brothers and sisters, please know your orthodoxy is merely potential. It is not actual until it is put into everyday practice. This is the power of the Orthodox faith and the reason why I converted to Orthodoxy. I became Orthodox because I hungered for a lifestyle that Christianized every aspect of my life, that made my life so formed and so shaped that the decisions and the chaos that are out there in the world today don't penetrate my heart because Jesus Christ reigns supreme in my life. And that choice is made visible and expressible in my decisions and in my priorities. On this day that we remember people who paid the price to hold to the truth, I want all of us to be orthodox on purpose. I want all of us to allow our faith to shape how we think, our opinions, our politics, our priorities, our passions, our decisions. It is only then that you can truly say that orthodoxy is changing and making you into Jesus Christ by grace, which is your purpose and your reason for existence. Amen.
You can follow Father Barnabas on YouTube or on our church website at stsrni.org. Thank you for watching.